All of us are interested in history to some extent, and there's no better way to get in touch with history than to walk among it and see it with our own eyes. History doesn't only have to apply to significant events or famous people, though. There's plenty of history in your local town or city, and it can often be found in the form of abandoned locations and buildings. If they could speak, they would have quite a story to tell. The ones you're about to see in this video certainly do. There's an abandoned bus known as the Fairbanks 142 in Alaska, and we strongly recommend that you don't go looking for it. Not everyone who does so completes the journey or comes back alive. This is the famous bus that became the basis of the novel and movie Into the Wild, and as a result of its fame, it attracts dozens of hikers and adventurers every year. Unfortunately, the journey to get there can be lethal, because it's in an exceptionally remote and frozen part of the state. The bus is famous because for over 100 days in the early 1990s, it was the makeshift home of a college graduate called Christopher McCandless, who gave all his savings to charity before setting off on a hitchhiking adventure that he never came home from. The problem with getting to the 142 is the Taklanika River, which is low in winter but rises higher and moves faster in warmer months due to melting snow. McCandless found himself cut off from civilization because of the river, and perished because he was unable to find food. Because of its grisly reputation, many people believe the bus should be destroyed, but it's still there for now. Just getting to Kata Beach in Phuket, Thailand is an impressive achievement, and so if you ever make it there, you might want to reward yourself by investigating the abandoned buildings that sit on the hills above the beach. The way that the surrounding trees have grown through the doorways and empty window frames almost give it the appearance of an ancient abandoned temple. But there's nothing antique about the four ghostly structures. They've only been abandoned for around 25 years. The reason they appear to be so neglected is that they were never finished at all. They're part of a building project that was commissioned in 1992, but abandoned in a state of semi-completion not long afterward. Not even the chief of public works for the region knows why the project wasn't finished, and so the lack of certainty has inevitably led to rumors that the buildings are either cursed or haunted. After so many years of exposure to the elements, they've become unsafe, and so while you're welcome to look at them, the local authorities warn against the idea of trying to get inside. Large houses come at a premium in Beijing, China, and so when a property as large as Chao Ni No. 81 becomes abandoned, you would generally expect a new buyer to be found almost immediately. Nobody's ever come forward to buy the former church, though, and that's because everybody in Beijing is convinced that the building is haunted. Found in the city's Dongcheng district, the once attractive property was built in the French Baroque style during the early 20th century, and is recognized as a historic building by the city's municipality. But its good looks and high standing don't make people any less afraid of it. Most of the stories come from the days of the Cultural Revolution during the late 1960s, when it was occupied by the Red Guards. The Guards fled the property in mysterious circumstances without being attacked, and so the ghost rumors started then, and have never stopped. Throw in the fact that some construction workers sent in to maintain the property somehow disappeared from the basement in the 1980s, and it's no wonder people are spooked. Since the 1990s, it's been nominally owned by the Roman Catholic Archdiocese, which is the only thing keeping it from being demolished. You'll find former nuclear weapons storage facilities all over the territories that once belonged to the USSR, but it's easy to miss them if you don't know what you're looking at. Here's one of them. It's a top-secret nuclear weapons storage base hidden in an equally top-secret storage location in the Urals, known only by its code name of Object 917. Although official information is difficult to find, it's thought that this was only the fifth such storage facility created in the Soviet Union, erected in 1957 and used to house nuclear bombs manufactured inside Plant 418. It didn't remain useful for long. A more modern facility was built nearby during the mid-1960s, and so this one quickly found itself with very little to do. eventually becoming abandoned by the military just before the turn of the century. The abandonment led to dereliction, and so by 2013 the ventilation system collapsed, and the entire facility flooded. The water turned to ice during the winter, and has never completely thawed out since. That makes it an eerily silent, frozen time capsule. If you love abandoned theme parks for the creepy vibes they give off, you will get a special thrill from visiting the abandoned theme park of Yangon in Myanmar. Given the incredible state of decay inside the park, it's incredible to think that it was brand new in 1997. As it's so hard to find reliable information about anything in Myanmar, it's unclear whether the park was ever used as intended at all. It was built to give the people of the city a distraction from the ongoing civil unrest in the country. But if it was ever used, it can't have been open for long. Many of the attractions that can still be found in its grounds would have been considered dated for the time, including 1980s video game cabinets and retro bumper cars. While you won't find any people enjoying the rides there today, the area isn't lifeless. It's full of mosquitoes, snakes, and wild dogs. That's enough to put all but the bravest of visitors off the idea of entering the park. But those that do have been able to bring back incredible pictures for us to share with you. Close to the resort town of Sintra in Portugal, you'll find the initial well of Quinta da Regaleira. Nothing at this location is as it seems. Even the name is a lie. While it might be called a well, and its 88-foot deep cylindrical construction is consistent with the design of a well, it's never been used to store water, and it was never intended to be used for that purpose either. In reality, it's a place where Freemasons could gather to go about their secretive rituals. The entire site of Quinta da Regaleira was built for wealthy businessman and Freemason Antonio Augusto Carvalho Montero in 1904, and contains a network of underground tunnels and hidden rooms. Many of the tunnels lead to the bottom of the well, where you'll find an enormous Knights Templar cross mosaic pattern. Unsurprisingly, when Montero passed away, he didn't leave behind any written records that might tell us what happened in the privacy of the well. But the variety of symbols related to alchemy, masonry, and tarot mysticism on the walls are enough to tell us it was a place of grand ceremony. Let's make the short journey from Portugal to Spain, where we find Casino de la Rabasada. During its golden years, this was one of the most celebrated hotels in the whole Catalan region. But now, it's a strange Gothic specter of a building that frequently surprises unsuspecting hikers in the countryside near Barcelona. The hotel part of the complex was built in 1899, but by 1911, it had been expanded to include not only a grand casino, but also an amusement park. This was a place where the rich came to let their hair down and play, with access limited strictly to those for whom money wasn't a concern. Unfortunately for them, their playtime didn't last very long. The region's governor outlawed gambling in 1912, leaving the hotel with an enormous casino that it couldn't use. It limped on for a while, but went bankrupt in the early 1930s, and has been officially abandoned ever since. Although it did find some use as both a barracks and a bomb shelter during the Spanish Civil War. There are some rumors that revolutionaries were abused and tortured at the site, with their remains buried in the surrounding grassland. Perhaps that's why nobody's ever come to dig it up and redevelop it. Mayan ruins spread across large areas of South America, but one of the most spectacular ruins is the ancient city of Copan in Honduras, close to the country's border with Guatemala. It's abandoned today, but during the classic period of Mayan history between the years 500 and 900, it was home to around 20,000 people, all of whom disappeared almost instantly when the kingdom collapsed. As the centuries passed, Copan was subjected to heavy erosion from the flow of the Copan River, but following the rediscovery of the site by European settlers, the course of the river was adjusted to protect the site from further harm. Copan is especially notable for its enormous collection of Mayan hieroglyphic carvings, almost 5,000 of which have been discovered so far. But the numerous 15-foot tall stelae, which are often covered with portraits, tend to provoke just as much interest from visitors. The entire history of Copan's royal house is told in the glyphs found on the steps of the hieroglyphic stairway, which is the most iconic single monument at the location. We don't know what's more stunning about Castel del Monte in Andria, Italy, its incredible architecture, or its unusual geometry. The name, which literally translates into English as the Castle of the Mount, doesn't do justice to this wondrous construction, which was built by order of Emperor Frederick II in 1240. He was clearly very keen on the number 8. The base is octagonal, the towers in each corner are octagonal, and each tower contains 8 rooms. Legend has it that there was once also an octagonal basin set into the courtyard as a representation of the Holy Grail, although that's never been substantiated. The design's style borrows elements from North Europe and the Middle East, along with contemporary medieval architecture and a pinch of classic Hellenic inspiration. Quite why the emperor wanted his octagonal-inspired castle is unknown. As it featured neither a moat nor a drawbridge, it would have been impractical for him to use it as a fortress. In the many years that have passed since, it's been used as a prison and an asylum for political refugees. But finding that out hasn't got us any closer to working out what it was built for in the first place. When you hear the name Boston, the first place you'll probably think of is the famous city in Massachusetts, USA. It's far less likely that you'll have heard of the abandoned village of Boston in Ohio, but that's because it's better known by its nickname. It's called Helltown, and that isn't without good reason. According to legends and folklore, this is a place of ghosts, giant mutant snakes, and creepy cults who carry out human sacrifices. Life was quite normal inside Helltown from 1806 until 1974, which is when then President Gerald Ford signed an order to evict the entire population from their homes to make way for the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. To compound the insult of being forced to leave, the plans to create the park stalled, and the properties have been left standing empty for decades. Somehow things got even worse from there. Illegal chemical dumping occurred here in 1985, leading to an outbreak of infections among rangers, and probably explaining the legends about the mutant snakes. The rumors about a cult are connected to the strange church in the middle of the village, which features upside-down crosses. As to why the crosses are upside down, your guess is as good as ours. Returning to Spain, we find the once charming mansion known as Cortijo Dorado in Malaga. The architects who designed the mansion came up with a quirky concept for it. They decided to include one window for every day of the year. That ought to have made it a bright and cheerful place. But instead, it's become something of a must-see tourist destination for ghost hunters. When it was built in the 19th century, it was supposed to be a celebration of the changing times in the country, and was part of a project that was intended to take a small farm and turn it into an equivalent of an agricultural factory. Unfortunately, the Heredia family who owned and lived within the property weren't well liked by the locals, and rumors about their supposedly sadistic and satanic practices within its walls spread like wildfire through the nearby town. The dark reputation of the property wasn't shaken off when it changed hands in 1925, and so it fell into ruin not long after that. Numerous restoration and renovation plans have been discussed for the site, but all have fallen through. Perhaps there's something to be said for the idea of it being cursed after all. If mysteries are what you're after, why not go to an abandoned location that was literally built with mystery in mind? It's called the Court of Mysteries, and you'll find it in Santa Cruz, California, USA. Everything about this property is strange, from the Illuminati-like symbol above the entrance to the fact that the builders who worked on the house were only allowed to work in the dead of night. Those who believe the legends about this house say that it was built at night because the light of the moon blessed both the workers and the property they were working on, which is loosely modeled on a Hindu temple, but also contains symbols that reference various occult spiritualist beliefs. along with 5-pointed stars. More cynical people tend to point out that working at night during the 1930s was a good way to stay out of the way of building inspectors if you don't have a permit for the work you're doing. Kenneth Kitchen, who headed up the project and lived in the property, had a keen interest in mysticism and mystery. Even the walls contain messages in Morse code. As a cherry on top of the cake, the mysterious Mr. Kitchen vanished without a trace in 1957 and was never seen again. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.